What's going on, guys? Captain Papi here. I am live on twitch.tv/Captain Papi, and today I thought, as we are approaching the end of the year, I would do my annual little video of my thoughts on OPTC in 2023, and that is this year, as a matter of fact. But I put out a little post on Twitter, with not much notice to a lot of people, in regards to what my thoughts are on Treasure Cruise this year, and then kind of just rattling it off. I don't know how long this video is going to be. It's going to be completely unstructured, most likely unedited as well. And then we'll kind of play it by ear and go from there. But what are my overall thoughts on Treasure Cruise this year? Now, I think Treasure Cruise is kind of in a bit of like a weird growth spurt to some degree, in the sense that I feel like they've made a very large conscious effort, especially in the latter half of the year, to really push the game into a direction of this consistent development life cycle of continuing to update the game, update its game modes, and putting out quality of life updates to some capacity every single time. But it's kind of interesting in that regard because, generally speaking, Treasure Cruise hasn't really been like that. We haven't received this many updates in a period of time, and we're in that kind of realm now where we are getting a bunch of updates for Treasure Cruise, and it's in a really good space. So I think, that being said, I think we're pretty fortunate to kind of be in this kind of position for the most part, but we don't want to sugarcoat it too much because, Treasure Cruise in itself has never really been, as prominent as it probably should be. But a few things have been good, a few things have been bad. For example, if we're looking at updates, we had I think 4 major updates throughout the year. It's major in the sense of 4 updates. 12.3, we had 13.0, 13.1, 13.2, and the recent 13.3. I think the biggest one obviously being the 13.0 update of auto power up, and I believe that included EX Super. That also included the ship update and such. But what's been more unique though with these updates is like the 13.1, 13.2, and 13.3 that brought about TM updates, smaller little passive updates here and there, and then now with 13.3 we have a co-op game mode, which I don't think many people predicted or presumed or could have conceived of Treasure Cruise having a co-op mode. And to be fair, it doesn't necessarily function how we want it to function per se, purely because it's a mode that you kind of find somebody to play the mode with, as opposed to you going and reaching out to a friend and then playing with a friend, kind of akin to the barrel minigame. If people remember that way back in Treasure Cruise history, that was historic to say the least. But it's really cool that we are getting these consistent updates, and we are now getting more incremental updates as opposed to just getting one big ass update every 6 months. From right now, we currently will be getting another update in January, about end of January. So that'll be 13.4 potentially. And that's really good. They're iterating on the product, which is, always a really good thing in development of any software or any video game or any middleware or whatever it is. And that's super positive. But, with all positives, come negatives. And that's unfortunately the way that Treasure Cruise works. Now, there's a few things that I want to go over. The few comments that I made, and I appreciate those that did leave some comments. Obsidian Steed, BBJ, and Addy B. I appreciate you guys for putting some stuff out there. But one thing that I actually really liked was a comment from BBJ who mentioned that during the award show, I realized how unimportant 90% of the legends released this year were. So pull on the big celebrations only was more true this year than ever. And I kind of just agree to it 100%, right? Where when I was making the award show and I was looking at, okay, all the legends that released this year. Now, we could run through all these legends and probably out of the 50 legends, you could probably say that around at minimum, if I was being generous, 35 of them are not required in any capacity. 35. Even if you wanted to get more hard stuck, you could easily go towards saying 40 legends out of the 50 released are irrelevant to the most capacity. Like, can you still use them? Sure, you can use any character in this game because it ends up becoming up to the player and how they want to approach it. But it's kind of concerning when we are being shoved in our throats of legends upon legends in such a consistent manner where the legends aren't actually that good for the most part, and it's like, that's not too healthy. I mean, judging by the most recent release of Green Bull, we can now formally say that the legends per day, so this is from V1 Whitebeard's release on global to now, is 12.8 legends, days per legend, not legends per day, Jesus Christ, 12 legends a day, my God. But 12.8 days per legend. So that's from V1 Whitebeard, who released in 2015 on global. So you're telling me that we've gone from an average of like 30 to 40 days a legend to getting one every less than 2 weeks. And then from New Year's 23 batch until now, it is 7.2 days per legend. So we are currently averaging a legend per week, which just is insane. And I mean, I think I brought it up in the award show itself, but from the November 30th to November 30th of this year, which is the 2 time frames of the award show, we had 50 legends release, which just is so many characters. Like, that's a lot. We had more legends than rare recruits, like basic rare recruits release, which is just an unfathomable thing. So I completely agree. I think that pulling on big celebrations is now is genuinely like more realistic than ever, in the sense that there is really no value in you pulling on an end of month batch. There is a lot less value pulling on Kizuna Legends or Rumble Legends or Treasure Map Legends or whatever it is. You kind of just pull on the big banners, get the big units, 2 thumbs up, you clear the content and you move on with your day. And I mean, that's just an ode to the content cycle, right? Like the content cycle, and then, you know, how they've structured their entire business. It doesn't leave me a lot of hope in terms of the money grabbing aspect of Bandai and Dreecom. But, you know, I guess it's like the monkey's paw, where it's like you get updates consistently, but we release a legend every week. So you have to take the good and the bad, right? You know, and that's always going to be incredible, you know, when you really think about it, that we have now become accustomed to like 50 odd legends a year, and then like 80-90% of them being generally pretty useless. It's like, damn, okay, fair enough, go off, you know, do your thing. One thing I wanted to read as well was from Obsidian Steed as well. It's like, have the rare recruits / Sugo rares been unique or filled the gap of what we needed this year compared to last year? Like, we got Raise Max for being super different. We got Quick Killer for being one of the very few characters who can reduce cooldown, paralysis, and despair. Have the units this year been very valuable than prior years, or have they been generic and not pull worthy? I think the way that I kind of think of that point is that rare recruits have just become really good on an average basis. You know what I mean? Where on an average consistent, rare recruits are generally removing minimum like 2 debuffs and then doing some sort of boost. Which, if you were to ask somebody like 3-4 years ago, if a rare, like, you know, like something like a rare recruit Bobbins coming out when he did, in comparison, if Bobbins came out now, people would probably be like, that's a pretty good rare recruit, but he would be forgotten. But Bobbins coming out in his time, everyone's like, holy crap, this rare recruit is ridiculously good, you know, in that time frame. So I think it really is that time frame. And now more than ever, the units that are releasing are naturally releasing for the content that is existing. So it's really hard to kind of say that, oh, rare recruits are really good purely because they're coming out for a certain purpose. and then you know that the really good rare recruits are the ones that you use later on down the line. But how often, when you genuinely think about it, how often are you using rare recruits from like 6 months ago? You're really not. Rare recruits are kind of placeholders as boosters, as additional drops, as easy ways to mitigate content. I mean, speak for Treasure Map, for example. Treasure Map boosters are very hit or miss in terms of their quality outside of Treasure Map. But in Treasure Map, they're invaluable purely because they make clearing the content like brainless. You know, they make it very straightforward and very, very quick. So like, I don't know if rare recruits are necessarily filling the gap of like what we're missing. Because I think right now, it's more that we look towards legends to fill that gap. Like, are there specials removing debuffs? Are there specials providing boosts that are necessary to clear content? Are these units having, debuff removal in their captain abilities? How flexible are they? What are they? Like, the legend at the end of the day is what is getting pushed the most into players' view. That rare recruits are kind of just like an added, like, benefit. But the rare recruit itself is not going to be the selling point anymore. Like, I don't think I could tell you what a single rare recruit does from 2023 purely because I would look at the rare recruits and someone would say, oh, that Robin's really good. And I'd be like, cool. Like, that's awesome. The Robin's really good. Like, sick. Okay, I'll try to get the Robin then, for example. Otherwise, I'm not really thinking about, like, these rare recruits at all, you know? Like, I think that in its own regard is kind of upsetting because we're losing out on these rare recruits and, you know, the value of having more units, more flexibility, more ways to solve puzzles and such. And in its own regard there, it's kind of a missed point. Yeah, like, I don't see a world where units really regain that precious value because rare recruits and like legends like 5 years ago were like a really hot commodity that was releasing very infrequently to the point where having a new legend or having a new rare recruit meant that you could progress so much further. Now that's not really the case, where we have just this plethora of rare recruits that for the most part do the same things, the same combination of paralysis, despair, paralysis, bind, despair, attack down, paralysis, attack down, despair, attack down. Like, there is most likely a rare recruit that covers any one of the multitude of potential combinations of debuffs that we're getting in game. And then even then, the debuffs that we're getting in game are designed towards the new rare recruits. So even if you're like, oh, I need a unit that removes paralysis and despair at the same time, well, I'm sure there are units that exist for that, but there's also the new one. And therefore, you're now incentivized as an individual to then go acquire that new rare recruit. So it's just this continuous predatory perspective of forcing the player to keep spending the money, spending their time, spending their earned gems on characters that they perceive that they might need for this month's content, when in reality, they don't need them at all. And I mean, I fall prey to it a lot, and I'm sure that everyone else falls prey to it very consistently too. And that's just what gacha is. And, you know, you have to also keep in mind that gacha in itself, you know, you're meant to be playing Treasure Cruise for fun, right? Like, and that's what we should be doing. And we you know, and I'm probably the biggest culprit because I psychoanalyze Treasure Cruise like every single day. But in reality, Treasure Cruise should be played for fun and for fun only, you know, and I think that that's a really important thing. One other point that I also want to bring up as well is Addy B brought up Kizuna Jail is miserable for new and returning players. That's the first point that I want to bring up. This whole idea of like a jail thing is actually becoming way more prominent, where it takes years now. If you start right now, it's going to take you years, not like 1 to 2 years, like potentially 4 years of consistently playing Kizuna and getting insignias to acquire all of the skulls to 6+ your units. On top of that, the PKA store. Now that the units are going to the PKA shop, it's the old Blitz units. You have the obviously the size straw hats, which I mean for a new player you get them for free anyway. But now that previous PKA units as well are also going to the PKA shop, the same thing goes. It's going to take years for you to acquire all of those units. I mean, maybe not to the same degree as Treasure Map because you do get a really large sum of blue tickets during Treasure Map anyway. But it's still this consistent jail-like structure where you can't expect players to want to consistently play just to get these skulls to, progress their account and their units. And obviously, you can naturally make the argument and be like, oh, but this 6+ isn't needed. And it's like, that's fair and that's completely true and understandable. However, there are a lot of people that need, not that need, but there are a lot of players, including myself, that just enjoy the premise of progressing your account. And in that sense, progressing your account means getting those random characters to 6+, getting those characters to level limit break and super evolution. And I mean, that's a great point in the chat there. Like, level limit break is still an incredibly daunting factor. The fact that we still don't have, and nor will we ever get, a consistent way to farm level limit break posters, the same way that we can farm level break materials, limit break materials. Sorry, I should say. That's also a really important factor that needs to be, considered. On top of that, they mentioned, the increased difficulty in PKA, TM, etc. strongly pushes players to pull on bad banners. Again, like we mentioned, there's this natural, what seems to be this, exponential or potentially linear, I haven't really decided yet, curve, or I guess for linear, straight line, of, content becoming increasingly more difficult for new and mid-game players to actually clear, because it's way too hard to clear it without the new units, or you don't have an established box. Like, for example, the past couple of treasure maps have been super duper challenging to actually complete without the correct units. And especially if you're a new player and it's your first time in, let's say, Grand Line, and you have to build multiple teams, you're going to struggle a lot. And naturally, that's why they offer you the opportunity to, play in East Blue. But if you play in East Blue, you minimize your rewards that you're earning, and as such, you're going to stay further behind. So at some point, you have to make the jump to that Grand Line, to that New World stage. But if you don't have the characters, you have to pull on the banners, and that kind of creates this very toxic cycle overall. Which I guess kind of leads on to the final point there with the film red structure being awful and how news might do it too. I think I've come full circle on the film red structure, and I kind of just don't really care about it anymore. And I think that's purely because I've kind of accepted that Treasure Cruise is always going to have a really toxic and bad banner structure, that I no longer look forward to what the banner, what the steps are in the banner. For me, the most important factor is always going to be what characters are available. And I mean, does it suck that they release 3 massive banners back to back? I mean, yes, for sure. But for the most part, with these banners releasing back to back to back, they all kind of exist at the same time. So you don't necessarily have to pull on the first banner that releases. You can kind of just not touch that banner until later on if you really want to. Like, if you're patient, I suppose, more than anything, it'll allow you to understand how to pull on these banners, and kind of go from there. And rather than continuing in circles with my thoughts and stuff, I think Steed's put in a fantastic point there. I mean, like, let's just end it here. It's been, what, 20 minutes now? I've kind of rambled on about the shortcomings of, more of the niche aspects of the game. I didn't get into any of the actual bits of content like, TM and Kizuna and stuff. If you want to hear my perspectives on the game modes, go check out the State of the Game video that Stump and I recorded together. That's going to give you more of a perspective. This is kind of like, this video is more just me rambling. There is one thing I want to bring up before, which is a positive, that I think I brought up in the awards show as well, but the Grand Maintenance. We all memed it. It was kind of a devastating little factor that occurred, but at the end of the day, we have to remember that the Grand Maintenance, deep down, was actually a really positive thing for the game, because what Grand Maintenance meant was that the game never anticipated to reach the point that it did. And these are kind of the words that a Dokkan and Dragon Ball Legends player Goresh mentioned on Twitter, which was very nice for somebody in a different community to kind of make this kind of a comment. And it really shifted my perspective on Grand Maintenance. And deep down, it's like a necessary evil where we're continuing to play the game, continuing to make enough money, we're continuing to support the game, we're criticizing the game, we're giving feedback where possible. And in all those points, it allows the game to keep going forward. And because the game is continuing to go forward, it means they need more server space and there's more data to handle. And that's how Grand Maintenance kind of occurred. And because that occurred, it's kind of a positive. It means that we have exceeded the expectations of Bandai, of the original people that conceived of the game's idea in itself, of the development team. And I think that that's an ode to the community for maintaining their stance on the game and still supporting it even when times get a bit rough. And I guess that kind of leads me into the ending point. Like, what do I hope to see in the upcoming year? What do I want to return? What do I want to see? What new? I want to see a new game mode. I want to see a new game mode, and I want to see in that game mode a way to just farm material and farm it consistently. So similar to just like farming 5 stamina islands for Hime turtles, I want a way for me to use my stamina where I can just grind it out. I can just grind content, have it on auto, or have to play it, and that kind of gives more content to potentially stream as well, and it allows us to show off the game. So that's the big in terms of gameplay wise. I mean, ideally, I'd love them to reduce the amount of legends that they're releasing, but that's not going to happen. So I really hope that if they're not going to reduce the amount of legends that they're releasing, I hope that they increase the creativity and usability of these characters in the future, so that they aren't just 1 month and done, that they end up finding value later on down the line. And of course, I would love them, as much as I hate GARP challenges, I really want them to re-release some sort of challenging mode that is kind of between like a 60 stamina raid or arena and Grand Voyage. So that middle ground where it's still challenging, it has a puzzle aspect, but it isn't impossible for people to complete, and have that be a mode where people can play it and grind it. On top of that, I hope they continue to flesh out co-op. I mean, I think it's really positive that they are releasing a survey after co-op has been out for a month. I think it's fantastic. Hopefully people can give some good feedback there. Obviously, with how crazy One Piece is, we can expect a lot of incredibly good characters to come out as well. And I think that that's going to be very fun. And you can obviously tell that 10th anniversary is next year for the JP version, and essentially Treasure Cruise in its own regard. And we're going to get probably a really, really massive celebration, is the hope of that. 10 years in Treasure Cruise and we're still going strong. One of the longest running gacha games. So that being said, with all the positives, there's always going to be negatives. But, if we want to be negative, we have to be constructive. And that's kind of the law of the land there. Now, that's kind of what I have to go off today. This isn't necessarily the best ever, my thoughts on Treasure Cruise. I probably could have done a lot better here, but I just thought I'd ramble. I appreciate the guys that sent in a little, some hints and some stuff, to kind of talk on. But I think we covered more of the niche aspects of things in terms of Treasure Cruise. I think it's very easy to talk about TM's bad and Kizuna's bad, and all that stuff's very, very true. But there's a lot of other aspects of the game that need to improve. And I think that right now, if we keep up this community communication and we keep up these consistent version updates, I think the game's going to be heading into a very positive direction. And, you know, we just have to stay strong and stay positive and, you know, keep being open-minded and, you know, not settling for the bare minimum. And when things go wrong, we put our hand up and say, hey, that's not good. When things go right, though, on the other hand, we have to put our hand up and say, you've done a good job. You know, you have to be positive and negative to, you know, to make things actually happen and change and occur. But with that being said, I've been Captain Papi. Those have been my thoughts on Treasure Crew in 2023. I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.